The challenge that you have is in sterile processing, you want to be able to, and anywhere that you're doing electric leakage, you want to be able to quickly and easily identify the probe that you're testing, the TE ultrasound probe that you're testing. You want to be able to record that information, and you want it to be accurate for what you're actually doing.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you bite dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you are tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this Vendor Spotlight, we speak with Levi Moore, President and COO of Acertera Acoustic Laboratories, to tell us about some new technology to test ultrasound probes. It's called the AmpSafe, and it really is going to just drive this kind of electrical leak testing into the future. And as Levi will tell us, it's kind of a niche market. And as a result, there really haven't been a lot of improvements in the design of these electrical leakage testers. And so they just kind of went ahead and did it. And one of the things we're going to be hearing about is how much time it's going to save you and how much more information we're going to be able to get to be much more proactive and approach repairs in a preventive way before small problems become large ones. We're going to be right back with Levi Moore after a short break.
From the 17 studios, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining us now is Levi Moore, President and COO of Acertera Acoustic Laboratories. We're going to be talking about the AmpSafe today, Levi, but I'm really excited to have this conversation because I can just tell you, leak testing, for so many of my conversations, people are talking or thinking about fluid invasion, which applies here, but we're also talking about electrical leak testing. We're going to be talking about ultrasounds. So I just can't wait to dive into this. And I want to welcome you, to the Beyond Clean podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Levi, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? What kind of brings you up to today where you're coming on and talking about this very unique device, AmpSafe?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my dad and I actually started a company in 2011, which is what we're in, but our time in ultrasound actually goes back much further than that. Mine to 1997 when we were starting into building test equipment and probe repair for ultrasound devices. And my dad's back into the late 70s after he got out of the Marine Corps. He decided to apply his radar training to something somewhat similar and has been involved in ultrasound since. And so the two of us started working together in 97. I took a break to join the Marines after 9/11. And then I came back in 2005 and have been involved in ultrasound ever since. So we started this company in 2011, and we're looking to try to help hospitals and the people that are so critical in that value chain inside the hospital.
Well, Levi, first of all, thank you for your service, especially at a really uncertain time. Just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
So you kind of talked a little bit about the background in the company, right? Like how it was founded. But what do you actually do? Like you're manufacturing, you're designing. Talk about, a little bit more detail there.
Sure. We've been working with a lot of the original equipment manufacturers to do probe repair for most of the last 7 years or so. But a lot of what we do is in developing test equipment to be used within the hospital to help the people inside the hospital know that the equipment is functioning correctly and to be able to find it early when failures start to come in. In addition to that, we have a part of the business that develops new ultrasound equipment. So we're on the front edge of developing a lot of new ultrasound technologies and expanding the uses of ultrasound. And then we also help do FDA 510K submissions. So when somebody invents a new ultrasound system or they want to start selling it in the market, generally they come to us. We help them to do the testing to make sure that it's going to be safe to use on people. So we can demonstrate that to the FDA, and then the company can start selling that into the market.
That's a really big undertaking, and I'm familiar with that process more from the cleaning and disinfecting aspects of getting the 510K clearance. But what you're talking about is a different type of testing, right?
We do all aspects of it. So we've done full FDA 510K submissions, but a lot of what we do is focused specifically on the safety of the ultrasound itself. So making sure that you don't have focus where you don't mean to have a focus, or the total energy going in isn't too much at a single place at a single point in time. It's pretty embarrassing for everybody if you go in to get an ultrasound scan and you cook their liver instead, or you cook whatever it is that you are trying to image. So they're pretty careful about making sure that those values are proper. And that's contributed to ultrasound being just an extremely safe imaging modality. And a lot of that has to do with doing that work on the front end and making sure that things are going to be okay to use on people.
So important what you just said, because it really does piggyback off the leak testing. Like most people's frame of reference has a lot more to do with flexible scopes versus ultrasound probes. But we have all worked with electrosurgical equipment. And just as you described, if you're doing a minimally invasive surgery and you burn the liver, with like a grasper, and that's not what's intended. Also financially, hospitals get hit pretty hard for that. And I think the term that you introduced me to as we were preparing this was the ASCO report. And it's got something to do with quality and integrity. And that's what the FDA is really looking for. But how does that play into other areas of your business, not just helping them get the 510K and getting a device to market?
Sure. Yeah. We get to bring a lot of those things into the design of new devices and into the repair that we do when people find problems. Is that for us, maintaining those safety standards it's not just a good idea. We really are strong advocates to make sure that what we do is helping people. And the mantra that we continually talk about in our company is that this device may not be used on your mom, but it's somebody's mom. And so we want to make sure that it is working exactly right. It may not be your nephew, but it's somebody's nephew. And to us, that drives us to make sure that the equipment is functioning correctly and that there's not going to be any safety issues associated with it. Because like you were saying in electrosurgery or minimally invasive surgery, that the device can malfunction, or you can have errors that happen that cause problems. And actually what we're talking about with TEE probes and electric leakage is the primary area that's concerned with. And when you have improper levels of electric leakage, you can actually burn the esophagus. And of course, it creates other issues where there's opportunities for fluid ingress. But we take all those things. We take a very holistic approach to what we're looking at in each aspect of our business to get that sort of cross-pollination between the things that we're working on to bring those best practices in.
This is one of those areas that I feel like has come into a little bit more focus for sterile processing than before. I feel like a lot of facilities are trying to centralize the reprocessing with the experts. And so TEE probes are one of those that have come in, as well as you see a lot more departments doing flexible scopes for GI that they didn't do before. And when I was still educating for another company I worked for, I actually did some education around leakage testing and was always trying to make that distinction between this is what you think of usually with leak testing, but there's this other one. And what I'm kind of used to is this blue bin and a couple of electrodes get dropped into the water and you're connecting them to the probe to test for leakage. But you've really taken this to another level and simplified the process with the AMP Safe, but can you talk more about kind of the way it is today without the AMP Safe and where you were seeing an opportunity to just make this easier on folks?
Sure. Yeah. The big challenge I think in the market is that it's a pretty diffuse market. And because of that, you don't see a lot of companies coming in and bringing new innovation into this area. So you have some of the very standard, well-known electric leakage testers that actually some of those we helped design, maybe 12 or more years ago, about 15, 18 years ago. Those devices, the challenge that you have is in sterile processing, you want to be able to, and anywhere that you're doing electric leakage, you want to be able to quickly and easily identify the probe that you're testing, the TE ultrasound probe that you're testing. You want to be able to record that information and you want it to be accurate for what you're actually doing. Unfortunately, with a lot of the products that are on the market, they haven't evolved with the standards as things have changed. And they're stuck in a late 1990s method for actually recording data, right? You got to pay $1,000 for a little printer to print you out a gas station kind of receipt to tell you, yeah, this passed or failed. Whereas we saw that as that's a lot of work, right? All the digitization that happens inside the hospital with records. Couldn't we just skip some of these steps? Couldn't we just make this a bit easier for the people who actually have to do it? So in our device, you have push one button. The settings in the device know what kind of device it is because you connect to it like you would to a website. Anything that has a browser, you go into our device, you can save all the probes that you have in the hospital if you want to. Easy to select them. And then there are values that are already put into that device to make sure that the device is not just performing to the absolute maximum that is required by the standards, but that the individual GE probe is behaving the way that GE probe is supposed to behave, not just what is the absolute maximum.
So this is kind of connected to the Internet of Things in a way, is what I'm hearing you kind of talk about, so that it allows you to update records when new manufacturers and models come out. And we're really going to dive into that here in a little bit. But I just want to go back to that whole handwritten logs thing. And kind of the issue that we're seeing now is we're getting data, potentially even electronically in some cases, right? Like that gas station receipt that gets printed out is still an electrical reading. It just doesn't integrate anywhere. And if you were to have an audit that said, can you show us that you did this? Or if there was an issue and you had to investigate, all of a sudden you're going to like one of those binders where you've taped that stuff in, and it's not a push of a button to get that information. And combined with the fact, and I really think you made a good point here, is this is kind of a niche area. And because it's a niche area, innovation, because the ROI on it might be a little bit lower. And here you are, serving the industry in all these other ways, right? Helping companies bring devices to market, enhancing technologies that are utilized on those devices. But you're also really investing yourself in increasing patient safety by driving the testing technology forward. And I gotta say, that's really impressive to me, just in terms of like, you could get pulled in so many other directions, right? Launching a new technology. It's exciting. You get it out in front of the clinicians that are going to use it. It flies off the shelves. But, testing like this doesn't always get the love that it deserves. And the simplification of taking that, very manual effort of logging that and going back and looking at those records. And even if you did scan it in to another tracking system that was going to log that data, there's still a whole manual effort. So I just want to make sure I'm really clear that your solution is essentially getting that data, recording that data, and removing all of that wasted time as we continue to search for efficiencies in our staffing models and et cetera in sterile processing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those things that it's unfortunate that there isn't more effort spent on trying to help the people in sterile processing, because to me, they make the hospital run. So when you're having to introduce extra steps to be able to make something that should be pretty simple actually go through and be reliable. That's just a big opportunity to have a positive impact in the hospital, even if it's not going to be a huge impact as a product to be really financially successful. I mean, to us, it's really as much about helping the people inside the hospital to be able to do a job really effectively and make it a bit easier as anything. Like for us, that's what drives us is trying to help make these things better. And so that is a lot of what's built in there, exactly like you talked about, that we can automatically send those results to any email address that you want. So if you're normally having to record, this probe failed, or maybe it has an issue and you don't notice, in our system, it will just email, clinical engineering if you want it to go to clinical engineering, so that immediately they have that information and they can come fix it. And it sort of takes one of those things off your plate that you don't have to then go, oh yeah, now I need to go make sure that I tell John that this thing's broken. He gets notified immediately and he can take care of it. And I think it will help. I hope that it will help to take some of the blame out of what goes on a lot with the sterile processing department. And from what I've heard, that, this probe failed. Well, that's probably sterile processing's fault. But when you're doing it with our system, that information comes through before anything really happens. So you have clear, actionable information, and that information gets communicated immediately. So it kind of takes the problem and puts it back to where I think it belongs, which is, making sure that these things are being used properly within the surgical suite.
It's interesting because there's this partnership between sterile processing and biomedical or clinical engineering on how we care for these. And if the Joint Commission comes in, they're typically going to biomed and saying, where's the PM record, right? We need to see that these are being serviced regularly. And I want to go back to the current state, which is a very general leakage testing process. What I liked about what you said is the specificity to the model. And you get in a room with me and you start talking about devices, you're absolutely going to start hearing me talk about preventive maintenance at some point.
Yeah.
So having that specificity to make and model, does that allow you to be more proactive or preventive? I mean, I know we have to keep records on that, but this is also very expensive equipment. So waiting until it breaks usually means high dollar repairs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one of the things that we try to help with in this is that because we're not just recording the absolute value in relation, like a pass fail in relation to the standards, we're looking at that specific serial number of that probe. We bound it by what the actual OEM wants for the appropriate electric leakage values for that probe. But we can look and see, this week you measured 20 milliamps of electric leakage, and last week it was only 10. That could be a problem. That could be at least something that we have an opportunity to look at and do some of that preventive maintenance. My company can do it. There are others, but we're the best. So that's where you should go. But we do some of that preventive maintenance to be able to make sure that those devices continue to function really well. And as you said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? If we can get out ahead of it and actually get this thing done and taken care of, and maybe even planned for, right? That it isn't just an emergency. This broke and now we're all scrambling, trying to figure out what we're going to do. It's, okay, this is intentional. We can get this into a process and start to see faster repairs and more prophylactic action.
It's not really a big deal with these break, right? Because we've got so many of them in our inventory. It's not a big deal. I obviously say that tongue in cheek. And I bet loaders are always available too, right? At the drop of a hat in an emergency. I could see those both being major issues, right? We can't necessarily pick up the slack when one of these probes goes down just based on, again, small niche inventory, and loaner availability as a result has to be a bit of a struggle in the industry.
Absolutely. And frankly, a lot of this, depending on the testing, because our testing, not just in electric leakage testing, but we have the only device on the market that's used by major OEMs on their own manufacturing line to make sure that they function correctly. So when you work with us, you get access to this additional testing that can make sure that the devices are functioning well. You're not having to get loaners, perhaps. I mean, you can get loaners, but the hospital takes on additional risk when they bring a loaner in, because if the same thing happened, your probe broke, the same thing happens to the loaner. Now you broke two probes and you got to deal with both.
And you're paying for one you don't own.
That's right.
I've always felt weird about that. When you're paying for a probe you don't own, the loaner thing, like it's necessary. But you're right. Like if there's a break in process, and that's exactly where I'm headed now, is a lot of times somebody's thinking, if I bring in a new device or, it's going to impact how we do things. And you just told us about how much efficiency AmpSafe brings to the table. But, are they going to have to change what their reprocessing protocols are? Does it change the workflow? How does this sort of bringing this in, does it disrupt what they're doing today and bring a whole new training challenge for staff?
Well, what we've done, because we did help with some of the designs on the earlier devices, we made a decision that's not a great business decision to help hospitals. And that is, we use the same connector that they do. So if you want to use their electrode, you can use their electrode. Theirs costs like $1,200. Mine costs $250 and comes with a lifetime warranty. So you can choose whichever one you want to use, but you want to use their connector. That's no problem. It plugs into my device. Absolutely works. No problem. And really the goal was to try to make this as easy to use as possible. And so part of that was, how do we integrate into the process in a way that is not going to change anything that they are doing outside of the small things that we hope are making it easier, like any device that can access a browser. So a PC, a tablet, a phone, you don't have to install any software. You just pull up the browser. You can connect to AmpSafe. It has all of your data. It's something that we're trying to make it just very easy for people to use and not disrupt what you're already doing.
So they might have some probes in place, but eventually they need to be replaced. You just kind of outlined some savings ongoing, with the replacement probe at some point. But I do like that they can integrate the technology without adding the cost of probes and accessories, right? But you also just said that just the probes for some of the competitors can cost $1,200. How much is the full system all in? Like if you're getting all of that with the AmpSafe?
Well, with the AmpSafe, if you compare to the other devices on the market, the competitive devices are going to be around $4,000 all in. That includes things like the probes, the printer that you need to buy with it, and one connector. With our device, it's actually about $3,000 all in, and that's made up of the main unit and the probes, all the software, everything that you need is about $1,500. And then generally speaking, the adapters are about $1,500 a piece. So we've substantially reduced the price, and that includes everything that you'd need. So hospitals, most of the time when they're buying these devices, they have a single type of probe that they're testing, right? They might do all Philips probes or all GE probes. And there's a few that have a mixture, and really for any of them, we sell every kind of adapter so that they could address any probe that they have coming through their facility. But a lot of folks only need one adapter. And so that $3,000 price point, and that's very comparable to what for a one-to-one being able to get the same equipment with the same functionality, minus the fact that ours is all cloud driven. Ours is $3,000, theirs is $4,000.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And a huge savings there with all the increased technology and integration. And we'll talk about the tech piece, but I want to get real granular here, and really just a couple of things I want to cover before we wrap up. But I want to get granular with the design difference with your device. And then what does that look like? Are you still using those blue basins? Like paint this picture for me. And then I want to talk about the benefits of that integration. I know you talked about the emails, but I want to go a little bit further than that too.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we sell basins if people want to use them. We integrate with automatic reprocessing or cleaning stations. If people are using those, we integrate with them seamlessly. The device itself it's a modern design, right? We actually finished it this year. So it's based on 2022 technology and 2022 design. So it's actually, I know not everything with time gets better in terms of design, but I think in electronics, that's one of those things that things tend to just keep getting better. The boards that we use, the electronics that we use are of the highest quality. It does give people an opportunity to kind of take that, 1980s, 1990s technology that they're using in those old adapters. Even if they bought one this year from somebody else, it's still based on very old design technology. And that's not terrible because it may work. But in our case, we wanted to bring people into the modern era. So we can store, I don't know, 50 million tests on the device if we need to, right? But it also has access to the internet if those people want to be able to take advantage of live over the air updates, like you said, where we can send new probe models out to the device so that's free. It's just included with the service that they can continue to keep it at that cutting edge.
I love that. So no cost for upgrading your database. And remember that old way of doing things? It would be like, all right, there's a new file, and then you had to get IT involved and they had to update the database. And it's really not feasible in today's world to be able to do that. And, somebody's always like, oh, we didn't get the update, or we didn't want to pay for the update. So I love the way you're doing that. And even the open APIs, because one of the things on our sister brand Power Supply, we talk a lot about this. We have got an expert named Vin Matozo, and he talks about interoperability. And the whole idea is to bring all these different systems together, right? And there's niche situations like the AmpSafe that really solve a problem that could plug right in. But you've got to have that kind of open API framework so that the two systems talk together and there isn't a whole lot of problems trying to get two different companies to exchange information. And so do you have that open API, like they could just bring this data into their enterprise resource, planning system, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So the data is only as useful as you make it available, right? If people can't get access to it, then who cares? So what we've tried to do is we do use those application programming interfaces that are just open to be able to allow people within the hospital. If you're using Oracle or you're using SAP, to me, it doesn't matter. Whatever program it is that you're looking for, you can get access to the data in a way that is easy to import, so that you could tie this serial number got reprocessed on this day. Here's the electric leakage value. It was also sterilized at the same time. And here are what the values actually were, and bringing all of that. Here's the date. Here's the patient it was used on. Whatever you guys actually want to have integrated is possible. We don't store any of that patient information, but I know in a lot of hospitals, they'll have a number associated with that patient, and giving me that number doesn't tell me anything about who the patient is. But there's ways for us to just integrate this in whatever way works the best within the hospital. And that's really important to us, is being able to help make it easy.
Yeah. Tracking and traceability is it's an amazing focus, what we're all trying to do in the industry. And you talk to anybody in sterile processing, being able to take the device or an instrument back to the patient so that we know, impact. Right? If there's something that we did find after the fact, you would be able to know, wait, who was this device used on? But then also having those quality metrics all built right into that, and looking at that trending. And then you as a company being able to look at that trending kind of proactively as a partner, in your analytics to approach that ahead of time before those things happen, and to send out those alerts and communicate interdepartmentally in an automated fashion. Super, super helpful, I would think. And really, again, just making a lot easier in this niche area.
Our intent also with the device is that some of that data is going to be anonymized and shared across the industry. Because if you're doing an electric leakage test and you're seeing values that are 50 microamps and everybody else tests that probe and they're seeing it at 20, yours may not be failing, but we can at least tell you, hey, the average value for this is less than what your value is. So maybe there's something there that you need to look at. So there's aspects of that we're trying to draw in as well. And, this is the first release of the product. It's going to grow, and there's going to be other things that we'll find. Hopefully, we get really good feedback from the people in the sterile processing department, and they say, what would make this even better is this idea or this thing. And we want to continue to look for those areas where we can just come in and be helpful.
Yeah, being a leader in the industry and also developing this in-house as you have really does make for that evolution, and getting that direct customer feedback so important, because like you said, you can just continue to push that forward. And if there's anybody out there that's interested kind of making this move and taking their electrical testing to an automated and really time savings process and doing that affordably, they can contact you all through your website, which is acertaralabs.com, ACERTARA labs.com. You can also send an email to ampsafe@acertaralabs.com, ACERTARA labs.com. You can also call 303-834-8413, and make sure you're following them on LinkedIn and throwing some credit their way for driving, kind of this testing and technology around ultrasound probes, and TEE probes is probably everybody's most common frame of reference forward. Definitely be following them on LinkedIn. Levi, would you add anything before we wrap? Anything we forgot to mention that's kind of important?
I think the LinkedIn thing is, if you have interest in ultrasound, we post regularly videos on how ultrasound works, how repair works, things that you can go look at to expand your knowledge in ultrasound through these videos that we call 60 seconds of ultrasound. So they're not terribly long, but those kinds of things that we try to do to give people just a little bit of insight. And then there's additional information, of course, available through our website that we try to continue to help educate people on the uses and function of ultrasound, just because to me, it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I love it when we work with companies that get social media, get innovation, love to educate. And honestly, 60-second videos is perfect. Just a little nugget at a time, and having a real active LinkedIn page like that is definitely a key to success. So Levi, really excited about what you're doing, and I appreciate you coming on the show to talk about it today.
Thank you. And thanks for giving me a chance to have that conversation, and really to help us to reach the people that we really want to help. And that's a wonderful platform that you guys have developed to be able to communicate to the sterile processing department and the folks there.
Well, thank you, Levi. Really appreciate the positive words for Beyond Clean. That was Levi Moore, everyone, President and COO of Acertera Acoustic Laboratories, talking about the new AmpSafe device that's going to test leakage on ultrasound probes. And you're most commonly thinking of the TEE probes, I'm certain. But what I love is that this technology is really bringing us to a much more electronic, interoperable platform, so that we're reducing that manual effort. The fact that they're making it cost effective, and the fact that you don't have to buy all new accessories and probes, et cetera, to be able to utilize the technology, I think is also just a great way to approach the market and make it something that's easier for hospitals to adopt. I think the story that stuck out to me that Levi told, that maybe many of you have run into, where you have this issue with the probe and you're supposed to report it over to biomed or clinical engineering, but then your day gets busy and you might forget. And who knows, maybe it doesn't get out for repair. Maybe it just takes a little bit longer for it to get out for repair. But just having that peace of mind that that communication can happen automatically, I would think would be a huge relief. The other thing that I love is the specificity to the manufacturer of the probe and being able to look at some trending and then taking that data across all of their customer base and continue to learn from that and learn from feedback from their customers, building emerging technology this way and that being developed in-house by Acertera is just a great approach. And they're going to be driving the industry forward, and what a great relationship they already have with the FDA. But that's going to do it for this vendor spotlight. As a reminder, you can help support Beyond Clean by subscribing on Apple, Amazon, or Google Podcasts. We're also available on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or simply search for Beyond Clean on your favorite podcast application. And we have bonus content for certain episodes, but you've got to download our smartphone app for iPhone or Android. And while you're there, we'd appreciate a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. Speaking of feedback, if you've got a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover on a future episode, just send an email to info@beyondclean.net. Thank you for listening to this vendor spotlight on Beyond Clean.